To the Department of Education right now, an alarming report from the state auditor's office. Byron Brown is in the studio with us to tell us all about it. Hi, Byron. How are you today?
All right, thank you, Walt. That auditor's report revealed that the Department of Education's Dropout Prevention Office was defunct. Additionally, it reveals that the way that we calculate the graduation rate was changed to improve statistics. I'm joined now by State Auditor Shad White to discuss further details of his report. Good afternoon, Mr. White.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you for joining us. Talk to us a little bit about this audit and what it means for the Department of Education.
Sure. So we did a performance audit of what's called the Office of Dropout Prevention at the Mississippi Department of Education. Several years ago, back in 2006, the legislature passed a bill. It became law that required MDE to set up an Office of Dropout Prevention. And what we found when we did the audit is that office has basically ceased to function for several years. It has not had a permanent director. Many of the staffers who were in charge of doing activities to raise the graduation rates actually didn't know about the state plan that they should have been implementing. So one piece of the audit finding is that the Office of Dropout Prevention was not operating, and that means that they weren't complying with the law. The other piece is that MDE at some point in the past changed the way they were calculating the graduation rate. So they did a statistical change. They didn't inform the legislature, and that statistical change boosted our graduation numbers by about 9.7%. Those are the two key findings of the audit.
What do you want to see happen from this audit to the Department of Education?
You know, the ideal outcome in my view is, one, MDE begins to comply with the law. So they set up an Office of Dropout Prevention as the law requires. They begin doing work with local school districts. A big part of what MDE is supposed to be doing is helping local school districts develop their own plans to boost their own graduation rates. And that just simply hasn't been happening in the way it should have been happening in the past. So I think MDE needs to do that. And two, I think the legislature needs to ask some hard questions about our graduation rate. They need to ask questions about whether or not they should boost their own goals for our graduation rate as a state. You know, back in 2006, the legislature said we need to move the graduation rate from 61% to 85%. In that time, we've gotten there, but part of the way we got there is by changing the way we calculate the graduation rate. It boosted it by 9.7%. So now the legislature needs to ask, do we need a new graduation rate goal as a state?
Well, the MDE kind of responded to that, saying that the old system was kind of antiquated and this is a newer way. Are you buying into what they're saying?
Well, I noticed in their response there was no real answer for why they didn't tell the legislature that they had changed the way they calculate the graduation rate. To me, as state auditor, you know, my job is not to tell them what their best policy is. My job is to paint facts onto any given situation, is to let the public know how we got these numbers, how we calculate our graduation rate, whether somebody changed the way they calculate the graduation rate. So in my judgment, my job is to paint facts onto a situation, provide the transparency, and after that, the public needs to decide, and the legislature needs to decide what they would like MDE to do.
Is there a penalty to MDE for failing to abide by this law?
There's no real penalty other than the legislature is probably going to ask some hard questions the next time MDE comes up for funding. And realistically, that should happen in every agency every time any of us go for funding to the legislature. Every time I go for an appropriations hearing and I talk about the funding for the auditor's office, they ask me hard questions about what I'm doing over here, whether I'm complying with the laws that apply to my office. And I think for MDE, they're probably going to face those same sorts of hard questions. And that's a good thing. It's a good thing for the public. And it means that ultimately our students and our school districts are going to get more out of MDE in the long run.
Because one of their arguments they're saying is that Mississippi has been recognized for its improvements when it comes to education and how they're dealing with students that have dropped out. And this is kind of going against what they're trying to argue against.
Well, I would say this, you know, if you even just put aside the fact that they changed how the graduation rate is calculated, we have made improvements as a state in our graduation rate. We just haven't done it fully in the way that they have described. So there's a lot of credit to go around for teachers, for parents, for administrators, for the folks who work at MDE. They deserve a lot of credit for boosting our graduation rate, but they also boosted the graduation rate a little bit more just through that calculation change. And I think the public needs to know that.
So basically you're saying everybody needs to get on the same page and follow the law.
I think that's exactly right.
Auditor Shad White, we always thank you for joining us. It's good talking to you.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.